We're going live.
Yep.
Should we go live?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's go live.
We're going live.
Let's go live. Let's live our lives live. Hello.
Yeah.
And welcome everyone to another episode of Live with ASI, a month of knowledge production. My name is MK Smith.
And I'm Bassam Haddad.
We are thrilled to be back for the first time in 2023. We've got a great show lined up and some wonderful guests as well.
Yes, I've really been looking forward to this. And we actually have a couple of things to share, but we'll first do the intro, which we
Roll it.
even the intro, we kind of trimmed a little bit.
See, it's like we're So, Bassam, do you want to do the honors? Do you want to tell people what's up?
Well, we kind of decided to begin transitioning the show from something that we used to be a bit, your word, business
Casual.
to completely casual.
So if you're wondering, can they get more casual?
Not just
live?
in the clothes,
Yes.
but also in terms of this will be much more interview, discussion, conversation, video oriented, and we will still have the digest for everything that is on Jadaliyya, on all the other units at the Arab Studies Institute, but it'll be in the digest, and some of it will be featured in the show. The rest of it will be just conversations, so that people don't die of boredom.
Great.
Absolutely.
Anyhow, with
Yeah.
today's show, first off, we'll be discussing two newly released books that are featured in our New Texts Out Now series, one of which is a study of how we talk about and approach citizenship, and the other, which is a novel that centers the human tragedy of the Nakba in 1948. We'll follow that up with a conversation with Professor Max Weiss about his latest book on the history of modern Syria. After that, Jihad Abu Salim and Noura Erakat will be joining us to discuss some current events in the region.
Then we'll be speaking to Brahim El-Gabli about a series that he and some colleagues have recently started regarding Morocco and football. We'll also be taking a look at what the good people at Status have been up to. We'll have a couple of interviews regarding Palestine, and we'll also check in with Muhammad Ali Nail about his series about the crisis in Lebanon, October 17th Diary. We'll round out Status by watching an interview I recently conducted with Kali Rubai, who is heading to Fallujah, out of all places, to continue her research. It's a very interesting conversation. It's short and sweet and really powerful. I hope you stick around to see it. And it actually is about her research into the health consequences of exposure to burn pits in Iraq.
We'll conclude today's show by taking a look at what Jadaliyya co-editor Muin Rabbani has been up to at the Connections podcast, including a conversation about the so-called anti-Semitism crisis within the UK Labour Party. And as always, we'll offer you some must-read selections featuring some of the latest knowledge production at Jadaliyya. Let's get started.
First, we'll go over what's new.
We've
No.
accidentally brought someone in.
We accidentally brought Max, but it's actually not so much of an accident. Is it an accident?
It is, yep.
It is an accident. Well, Max is with us, so we are going to actually speak with Max, and
Great.
I think
We'll
we'll come back to Brahim because he's not even here yet, is he?
Right.
Right? Absolutely. Also, over at Newton, there is a conversation with Max Weiss about his latest work titled Revolutions Aesthetic, A Cultural History of Ba'athist Syria, which developed out of the author's interests in the intellectual and cultural history of modern Syria. Max Weiss is Associate Professor of History and Associate Faculty in Comparative Literature at Princeton University, and a literary, I need to work on my R's, it's a genetic defect, and a literary translator from Arabic into English, and he is here with us now to discuss the book. Welcome, Max. It's been quite some time.
Thank you so much for having me and for recognizing that I'm not Brahim El-Gabli, sadly.
An important distinction. Anyhow, thank you so much, Max, for joining us. And if you wouldn't mind, if you could start by informing our audience about your interest in Syrian history, what got you interested in the matter, and tell us a little bit about your research.
Yeah, sure. This new book, Revolutions Aesthetic, Cultural History of Ba'athist Syria, emerged out of my longstanding interest in the history and the contemporary production of Syrian literature, specifically novels. For years now, as Bassam indicated, I have been a reader, a fan, and subsequently a translator of modern and contemporary Arabic literature. And I came to focus especially on contemporary Syrian writers. And it was out of my engagement with works of Syrian fiction that I came to recognize that there was an important aspect of the making of modern Syria that had not been adequately addressed by historians, literary critics, cultural studies folks, and others. So the kernel was planted for my research into the making of contemporary Syrian literature and culture. That set me on a course to investigate more widely the making of a Syrian cultural field, which I proposed to study in terms of my own background and training and interest in intellectual history and intellectual historical methods. So, what I've done in this book is taken literature and film, and I'm happy to talk about both of those areas in more detail, and used them as a lens onto the intellectual and also political history of modern Syria.
Thanks, Max. I've been following your work for quite some time, and would love to know how do you feel this book is going to affect discussions on Syria today, or will it? And what kind of engagement might there be with the tragedy that continues to unfold in Syria?
Yeah, absolutely. The main argument that I make in the book is that an adequate understanding of the making of modern and contemporary Syria must look not only at the political, the military, and economic, social aspects of Syria's formation as a nation state, locally as well as regionally and in the world, but must also take into consideration cultural matters and take them seriously. So, first and foremost, I hope that the book contributes to a conversation about what Syrian studies is. As you know better than most, Bassam, Syrian studies is among the least developed subfields within the field of Middle East studies more generally, for historical reasons that we could talk about at length. What I have tried to do in this book is to bring together methods that are employed not only by historians, intellectual and cultural historians to be specific, but also the tools of literary criticism, film studies, while also at times drawing on methods of political science, effectively practicing political science without a license, in my case, and trying to draw together these threads in order to shed different kinds of light on the nature of the Syrian regime, Syrian state, Syrian society. And as a historian, I'm very concerned with periodization. What I think is one of the benefits of this book, in addition to being multidisciplinary in its approach, is that it brings together periods of Syrian history that are often viewed as disparate, separate. So looking from 1970 with the advent of the so-called corrective movement, al-Harakat al-Tasihiyya, that brought then Defense Minister Hafez al-Assad to power, continuing through the period of transition in 2000 to that of his son Bashar al-Assad, and then up and through the post-2011 period into the time of the revolution and subsequent international proxy war and civil war. I hope that I give a sense of both continuity and change in the sphere of cultural production and aesthetic criticism. The centerpiece of the argument is that there has been, and there continues to be, a struggle around what I call aesthetic ideology, and that the unrolling of a certain kind of state-driven aesthetic ideological project, one that I refer to as Assadist, Ba'athist cultural revolution, has been forceful, has been consistent, and has continued for decades, but that it has not gone unchallenged, and it has gone unchallenged from various angles. So I'd say periodizationally as well as methodologically, the the book tries to do a lot of work, and I hope that that is going to have an impact on Syrian studies, and also on our field more broadly. That's my modest hope.
Absolutely. Max, thank you for this, the connection that you made between what is going on in Syria and the work you're doing. And I really would like to follow up separately with you on your book, and we would love to host you for a separate podcast. Thank you for coming and joining us. And it's your first time, right?
It's my first time.
And hopefully we'll have you back again. And we definitely would like to speak with you separately in a long conversation about the about this really exciting book. As you know, this would be of huge interest for me, and I'm glad that it's out. And we'll hope to talk to you soon.
Thanks so much for having me. Good to see you all.
Take care, Habib.
Bye.
Bye.
I'm gonna steal this for a second. All right, as you can see, we have another special guest with us here. I don't want to block you, but I would like to welcome into the studio virtually Jihad Abu Salim, who is a researcher and PhD candidate at New York University, as well as frequent ASI contributor, as well as Jadalia co-editor, Noura Erakat, to discuss their thoughts on current events in Palestine. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome,
Hey.
Jihad. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Do you want to ask the question?
No,
I'm
yeah,
Mike.
well,
If you want.
we've been developing the situation in
Oh,
Palestine.
thank you.
We've been
We have.
watching the developments in Palestine, and particularly Jenin, and we, of course, know of your work and Noura's work, and we would like to actually have a conversation about what is going on right now. Can you share? And I know that I actually connected with you about a couple of things you put on Twitter, which grabbed my attention. I'd like you to also talk about this, Jihad. Can you share with us your view on what's happening and what you had said about in the tweets about how this is both new and not? So if you can just explain that, and we'll roll with that, and then Noura will join the discussion.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me again. Glad to be with you and Noura and everyone. The recent Israeli raid by Israeli forces in Jenin on January 26th has sparked fear in the West Bank and beyond. And this is, part of the continuation of Israel's aggression against Palestinians in the West Bank, in Gaza, and East Jerusalem, and the Naqab. But the raid, the attack on Jenin that happened on January 26 was very important because it signifies a new phase of Israeli aggression against the Palestinians. And it happened during daytime. Usually Israeli forces invade Palestinian cities during nighttime. Jenin holds lots of significance as a symbol of resistance against the occupation. The memory of anti-colonial leader Azzeddin al-Qassam, who had his last stand outside of Jenin. This is like part of the city's legacy, and of course, it's a place in the West Bank that is known for its defiance of Israeli occupation and the Palestinian Authority. And this happened in a context where, last year was the deadliest year for Palestinians in the West Bank in 2 decades. And of course, with the ascent of a new Israeli government that has been described even by the liberal media as, most right-wing in history, most racist. So many adjectives have been used to describe this government. And this government's agenda is well known. They're planning on, annexing the West Bank, taking over Palestinian land, and building more settlements. One of the immediate plans that they have is to build 18,000 housing units as part of a 1 million settler plan. But also, this is a government that casually talks about a second Nakba. They're calling for a second Nakba. They view themselves as, as the logical continuation of Zionism's project to ethnically cleanse Palestinians. Of course, Benjamin Netanyahu lied and said, in the interview on CNN with Tapper that he's not planning on ethnically cleansing Palestinians, but every policy Israel implements on the ground shows that this is the direction they're going in. So yeah, I mean, all of these things are happening, and in addition to that, despite the received increased global attention the Palestinian issue has been receiving, the demands of Palestinians have been met with cynicism and have been ignored by international bodies. So there is now this generation of young Palestinians in the West Bank who were born and raised during and after the Second Intifada, and they see the resumption of armed resistance on a larger scale as the only way to win Palestinian liberation. And we've seen in the past months that Palestinians have become more proactive in their resistance, and that makes the possibility of entering a new phase of Israeli aggression and Palestinian reaction and then Israeli retaliation something that we will have to deal with, especially this year. Ramadan is coming. It's in the first 2 weeks of April. Ramadan will overlap with the Jewish holiday of Passover, and usually unfortunately, of course, when these holidays overlap, we see escalation and provocations by the Israeli government. Settlers go to the Aqsa Mosque, and then they're followed by security forces that attack worshippers. So this could be a catalyst for further escalation and further aggression and further explosion of the situation. The equation, and I will end with this, the equation that ruled and created the terms for how things have been happening in the West Bank since the end of the Second Intifada, meaning Palestinian Authority security coordination, containment of the Palestinian public through an ever-expanding public sector, and incentives given to the Palestinian capitalist class in the West Bank, and worker permits and all of these things. They helped in preventing further explosion in the West Bank, but we're reaching a point where Palestinians in the West Bank and elsewhere see that this government intends on ethnic cleansing, and that there is no horizon for a political process like the PA has claimed for years and the international community has promised. So what do Palestinians do in the face of this feeling of impending existential threat and ethnic cleansing? So I think this has been my assessment. I'm curious to hear what Noura thinks, but I think this is the general, the general thinking in the Palestinian context these days.
Thank you very much, Jihad. Of course, there's so much to discuss, and unfortunately, in this format, we have to sort of limit it to just a few minutes. And would like to move to Noura to talk a little bit about the media coverage, and stay with us, Jihad, in case you guys want to go back and forth.
Hi, Jihad. It's great to see you. And thank you for MK and Bassam for having me on the program. I think, Jihad, you did a comprehensive job of telling us what's happening and placing it in the context of really a fascist right-wing government that's in place, that was democratically elected, and yet there's been zero to no accountability. There's been an explicit claim on the part of this government that there will never be a Palestinian state, that there will be de jure annexation of the Jordan Valley, that there will not be any change in the illegal status quo of the Golan Heights and East Jerusalem. Now, all of these are within the framework of international occupation law, and so might very well even be outdated by the facts on the ground. The reason I point them out is to say that even according to the liberal approach that the US as well as European capitals have pursued on this question, we have a government that has outright said that they will adhere to none of them. Beyond that, internally, they have also proposed to undermine their own ethno-national democratic institutions, such as the legislative measure that can override any judicial decision. They have been explicit about arming and deputizing more Israeli civilians and allowing them to kill Palestinians with impunity. I mean, they have told us everything that an investigation itself might reveal that would make them liable for war crimes and crimes against humanity. And yet here, even their testimony has been insufficient to move any of the capitals on this question. The United States has actually regressed. And in a State Department press conference featuring Saeed Ariqat, for full disclosure, a relative of mine who kept asking, will you at least tell us what the status of the Palestinians is in the West Bank and under these conditions? And the spokesperson could not even bring themselves to say that it was occupied. So we see regression in the United States. And as far as other European capitals are concerned, there's been no movement. Instead, we see an influx of more humanitarian aid as they continue to frame Palestinians as a humanitarian crisis and not a political one, as they should be rightly framed. We also see the EU Commission going so far as to use the IRA definition of anti-Semitism to condemn the Amnesty International report on apartheid. So we see this strange contradiction that the conditions on the ground are worse than they've ever been and are explicit. And on the other hand, we see that these Western governments are actually regressing on the question rather than moving in tandem to meet the challenge. And part of this framework has been a media that has been unwilling and unable to cover these developments adequately, obviously with significant exceptions, including Jihad, your intervention that we saw on Al Jazeera. But other interventions have been, one, not enough. There's just not coverage. There's zero context. There's no examination of this contradiction. There's no reflection that this is actually a counter-reactionary moment to the May 2021 Unity Intifada, which ushered a sea change in the way, almost paradigm shifting in the way that we understand Palestine as a freedom struggle. And yet what we see now is this reactionary force that wants us to understand that any criticism of Israel is anti-Semitic. And worse, in my own anecdotal experience, I had a producer call me after the Jenin massacre, 2 days afterwards, and after the Al-Qam shooting attack in Neve Yaakov, asking me to come on the program to discuss the image of Palestinians celebrating, as if, and it's one thing to, have a program about a massacre and then say, well, what do you make of Palestinians and their reaction? It's wholly another to just want to bring me on, to want to pathologize Palestinians as if they exist outside of a political context. And that can only be possible through a dual process of their dehumanization together with a complete erasure of context that makes this dismal reporting possible and which exacerbates this contradiction that I'm describing.
Jihad, please feel free to comment if you'd like to address anything that Nola said, or if you would like to close with a few words.
I mean, I fully agree with everything Noura said, and I hope we had more time to talk about this. But I would like to close with this small thought. I was in Palestine, in the Gaza Strip in 2006 when Palestinians elected what the international community considered the wrong electoral decision. And it's just been fascinating that we're still paying the price of this one electoral choice that the international community condemned. And in 2023, the most right-wing, outwardly racist, homophobic Israeli government is about to not only continue to receive all the advantages and military aid and financial support it receives from the US and its other allies, it's about to enter, there is a big possibility that they might enter a visa waiver program with the United States that might also normalize some aspects of Israel's apartheid. So, I just wanted to close with this really sad, observation and which I hope, can make us and you and everybody who's listening think about the absurdity of the situation, but also reflect on the urgency of the situation and the need to take action and double and triple our efforts in the coming months and years in light of what's happening.
Thanks, Jihad. Noura, any closing words? Would you like to maybe share with us what are the things we might look forward to and kind of set us up if there's something that legally or otherwise we should keep an eye out on?
I just want to emphasize this point that Jihad made, a very astute point, that Palestinians continue to pay the price for their for their electoral decisions, and yet Israelis not only get a pass, but they are getting rewarded for their fascistic moves. I think, it's really easy in this moment to lose hope, but once you place it in a broader context of what's happening globally, it reminds us that Palestinians are part of a global struggle, and what can be done is the work that we continue to do with one another. Certainly in the United States, it's continuing for mass mobilization actions. The local is global. So being the most active wherever you are, whether you're a faculty member, a student, a member of a faith-based institution, a city council, municipal votes, if you happen to be part of a union, this is the moment to continue pushing for solidarity and to continue insisting on the framework that this is a freedom struggle, that Palestinians are engaged in a freedom struggle similar to the upsurge that we saw in 2021. We need a similar move now in order to push back against these reactionary forces.
Well, thank you both so much. I know this is not, I would like to talk about this further, and I'm sure a lot of people listening would like to hear more, but we have to move forward, and maybe we can actually do something specifically on this topic. And am I in the picture?
Yeah, maybe I can interview Jihad.
You want to do it now, since we are on? No.
I could do my,
All right. Well, thank you, Jihad, so much for coming. This is your second time, Mahek.
Yes.
Ahlan wa sahlan. And we would love to have you under better circumstances. And of course, Noura, traveled so far to get here. So thank you also, Noura, for joining us at the studio. I apologize about the setup here. I just realized that we have enough cameras. We could have.
I'm between two of my favorite people.
Oh, we could have put you somewhere else, but I don't know why we didn't think of this. In all cases, I hope that we speak with you guys again, and perhaps this idea will hold you to it, Noura, of interviewing Jihad. Thank you both so much.
I'll be more than
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so
Maybe we can do a little interlude. Yeah.
All right. So
Well,
I just want to add before we move on.
You're not Noura Arakat.
I wish I were.
Okay, let's see. No, because
Yeah. I understand.
the thing. No, I know you understand.
Oh, but they don't understand. It's fair. But before we move on, and on the note of Palestine, I just want to add that certainly all eyes will be on Palestine moving forward, as they should be. And Jadaliya and all Arab Studies Institute spaces will be working to amplify the voices and narratives of Palestinians and those in Palestine right now.
Absolutely.
So keep an eye out on that space. Now, without further ado, we will be moving on to our next exciting topic, which is that of the intersection of Morocco and football. Bassem normally has to give the caveat, but I've been trained the correct football, the one you play with your feet, right?
Absolutely.
Not American football.
Yeah. It's not just a descriptive issue, it's an issue of life and death. If somebody says
Yes.
soccer in this household or anywhere,
You're done.
Yeah.
Get out of here.
Brahim El Gabli is a Moroccan scholar and assistant professor of Arabic studies at Williams University. In the wake of Morocco's thrilling World Cup run, he and some colleagues have begun a dossier of offline or of online articles on Morocco football and the social and political implications of the game in the region. He's here with us to talk about it, and I'm very excited. He's not only all these beautiful things, he's also
He's also beautiful.
He's also beautiful. Is that, can we say this? Is that like, is that, I don't know.
You tell me.
Are you okay with this, Brahim?
It's fine.
كل
Thank
شيء
you.
تمام. Okay,
كل شيء
amazing.
تمام.
We love that.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. All right, so he's also a co-editor of the Maghrib page. Did you say that already?
I did not.
He's a co-editor of the Maghrib page on Jadaliya. أهلا وسهلا Brahim.
أهلا بسام وماري كيت. شكرا على الاستضافة. Thank you.
Have fun. Thank you so much for joining us. To get us started, can you just take us through some of what you were thinking and feeling at the time as Morocco scored one stunning victory after another during this exciting FIFA World Cup?
Absolutely. And like everyone else who watches soccer or football, I really did not have any high hopes for Morocco. But I was deeply disappointed in a nice way, and I felt very proud and very happy to see Morocco beating one team to another and steering all these conversations online and like globally, and Morocco becoming like this amazing global focus. And I think that the World Cup for once did something great in showing how great Morocco is and like just shed a light on a history and a people and a region and a culture that usually like we don't hear about as much as we did during the World Cup. So I would say that it was pride, it was happiness, it was joy, and it was also a very strong sense of solidarity that I received from so many colleagues and many friends, even the times when I was not watching games because I was doing other things or teaching or stuff, people were still writing to me, and it felt really amazing and very nice.
Thank you very much. Now, another question for you is that obviously the team's achievements in Qatar were framed in political terms by many in the Arab world, particularly in North Africa as well as in the diaspora. Why do you feel it's important to have a strong analysis of the events that transpired?
Absolutely, and that's a great question. And our goal is that, historians of the present, it's a branch of history that looks at events as they unfold, that they are very close to our present, have created this whole system of like ideas and I would say preventive measures that would allow us to look at things like as they happen, but also to look at them a little bit from a distance. And I think everything that was happening with the joy, with the happiness, with the emotions, with the reactions to the victory was amazing, and it was like we lived it in its moment. But it was also nice for us and important to just kind of like bring some people together to think more in analytical terms and think about what it means, for example, for a team from Morocco to make it that far, what are the larger ramifications of this victory, and also to just ask people to now pause and think a little bit about what it meant for them to be part of this moment, both in terms of like victories, but also in terms of the kind of like facets of Morocco or Moroccanness, Arabness, Amazigite, Africanness, that all of this brought up in different analyses that we've seen. And it stirred quite a bit of like conversations between different camps and people. But we thought that we won. One of the things that Idris Jabari is a historian. He teaches in Ireland, and together with him, we're organizing this roundtable, and we brought people from different persuasions, different scholarly fields, but also with different intimate connections to Morocco, both as like family members or scholars who spent a lot of time looking at Morocco, and we wanted to bring a multifaceted perspective to what happened in Qatar and also beyond it, like the politics of soccer and the culture and all of that. So we think that it's really important to be a little bit reflexive or reflective after 2 months almost since the end of the World Cup.
Sorry, we were muted there for a second. Thank you so much, Brahim. Thank you for shedding light on the intersection of politics and football here for us. Obviously, football being as popular as it is globally, but specifically in the region, there will certainly be more to discuss in the future as football culture continues to evolve and grow. And we look forward to having you on the show to discuss not just football, but all things related to the Maghreb in the future.
Thank you. Thank you, Brahim, so much. And we always love to have you on. And we love your series and Malaf Khas in Arabic, the series you do also in Arabic. And we hope that we look forward to watching and reading more of what you guys will be producing.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity. And it's going to be, I wanted to add one thing. It's going to be a really exciting dossier because we brought in a lot of different people with really getting into the weeds of politics, solidarity, activism as they relate to soccer. Okay? Have a good day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And you're at Williams, right now?
Yes.
All right. Just in case,
and it's very cold. It's icy here.
Okay, I won't come.
Yeah, I was just saying, careful telling him where you are. He might show up at your door. Good to see you.
Take care, Habib. Salam.
Now it is time to talk about the latest episodes of our Status Awada audio-visual journal, or our podcast space, as you may know it. These new episodes are available now, and there are quite a few of them, so we'll go over a few of them. And while we bring in one of our more recent guests from the podcast, I just want to share that these podcast episodes can be found wherever you get your podcasts. That includes via the Apple Podcast app, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube. They're everywhere. There's no reason for you not to be listening to Status Podcasts. Isn't that right, Bassam?
Absolutely. And I'm actually very excited that we are finally going to, this year, 2023, going to do good on our project of having a YouTube channel where you could, at any point in the day, go in and listen to,
knocking on wood.
I'm trying to play it up, but it's
gonna be great.
It's gonna be awesome. Listen to any of the podcasts / lectures / panels, conferences that we have in our archive, including a number of new shows and a number of podcasts that are current and live. So it will be, I shudder to say the word C-SPAN, but it will be...
C-SPAN did have a moment, though, about a month ago.
Good.
People were into it. So we want you to be as into us as you were that 1 week of C-SPAN when the Speaker of the House was being elected. Anyhow, Bassam, do you want to welcome in our guest?
Yes, I'd like to welcome Isis Noussair, recently Professor Isis Noussair, Professor Noussair, who is an associate professor of women's studies and international studies at Denison University. Oh, recently. Oh, wow. This is a very interesting construction.
From the top. Start over.
Recently, Isis Noussair spoke with Samah Abbas at Status Hour about the most important critical stages in her life, affected by global and local political events, which turned into a drive and passion to employ knowledge to serve social justice. Professor Noussair, or as I know her, Isis, because I've known her for many years, believes that the production of critical knowledge about Palestine can transcend the geographical and national borders of Palestine, and that it is more effective when intersecting with the struggles of other oppressed peoples around the world. So we will be bringing in, I think we might only be able to do audio, so bear with me just a moment here. Let me make sure that we are able to bring her in fully. Let me see if this will work. There we go. I think we are.
Go. Wonderful.
Ahlan wa sahlan, Isis.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for
listening. How are you?
Hi, thank you so much for joining us.
It's so good to see you. I remember that Adams Morgan residence that you had. We used to have lots of meetings around there in the early 2000s and during the beginning of the second Intifada. كيفك?
تمام. Thank
أهلا
you.
وسهلا.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Professor, for joining us. We're very excited to have you here. First, can you please speak a little bit about the importance of placing the Palestinian struggle in an internationalist and intersectional context?
Yes, of course. Well, first, I want to thank Jadaliya for the opportunity to host Status and to have a podcast in Arabic. I sent it, actually, I shared it with many people, and the response has been amazing. It's wonderful to see the reach of these podcasts and also how we can bring knowledge production into, like, away a bit from the academy and from the high speaking into places where people can actually relate to it and where it touches their daily lives. So this is what I do in my work. I teach women and gender studies and international studies, and I actually have been doing research with refugees, both in Iraq, Iraqi refugees in Jordan and the United States, and also refugees from Syria, both Palestinian and Syrian in Germany. And I've been trying through my work to actually find also ways, I'm a social scientist, find other ways in which this work could connect and reach. So we did a play and translated poetry, things I never thought when I started my career teaching I'll be doing. So this is all to say that for me, thinking about Palestine is all about intersectionality. Thinking about knowledge production is very much about how our knowledge production relates to daily lives, to practice, to connecting theory with practice, but also to other liberation movements around the world and through the coalitions. I mean, Bassam knows we've been doing this work for years, but for me, it's very interesting to think of how we do it also within academic circles as well. For my own work, thinking about Palestine within this context is also thinking about Palestine as a matter of justice. And this is what we talk about in the interview at length with Samah, thinking also about applying feminist, intersectional, decolonial, transnational, and queer perspectives to thinking also about knowledge production in relation to Palestine.
Thank you, Aziz. And can you share with us separately what is it that we can expect from your own research going forward? I know that you are always busy, and I know that you're prolific. So what is it that's on the horizon for you?
Actually, I just got a note that I just need to send the manuscript. The publishers interested in a book I've been working on for a while. It's called, at least tentatively for now, Permanent Transients, Iraqi women refugees in Jordan and the United States. And it focuses on continuums of displacement in these countries, even before people left Iraq. What were the conditions that led to that forced displacement? And since many of the people had to stop in different places along the way, what happens until they get to the US, which could take up to 10 years. So that's one project. And then the other is on narratives of crossing of refugees from Syria in Germany. And that's another project I've been working on for a while. So these are the two manuscripts that are taking most of my attention for now. Aside from that, I've been doing some work on popular culture in the Middle East, and I'm working on a project, but that's a bit later, that relates to Syrian TV drama post the uprising and what happened in the country in 2011.
Well, Mabarouk on the manuscript. That's wonderful news. Congratulations. And I look forward to both of those projects that you mentioned. They sound fantastic.
Absolutely, Aziz. And I hope that we continue to speak with you going forward. I know that you'll be, putting out these fantastic podcasts and papers as you have been. How long has it been? It's been maybe 22 years since we've met, and I haven't seen you for many, many years. So it's really wonderful to see you. And thanks for coming on to Live with ASI.
Thank you, and best of luck with your work.
Shukran. Thank you so much, Azizti.
Bye.
Salam.
Okay, now while we prepare our next guest,
maybe we'll have one of those like interludes to just.
Let's.
Which one should we do? Status.
Yeah. Now, before we bring in our next guest, we do want to catch you all up on those aforementioned and promised new text out now reviews that we
Did you say
discussed.
Afro-mentioned?
Damn.
It's okay. We're the same
We're the
height
same
now.
right now. It's okay. Aforementioned. They say aforementioned. Anyhow, let's discuss two new books that we are celebrating and discussing on Jadalia. First, we have a fascinating interview, with Jessica M. Marglin about her new book, The Shamama Case, Contesting Citizenship Across the Modern Mediterranean, and another very interesting discussion as well with Suad Amri about her new novel, Mother of Strangers. You definitely want to check these texts out, and you can find them, not the text, but you can find interviews about the text at jadalia.com.
Absolutely. And we actually would like to address a couple more issues. Recently, I had a conversation with Kali Rubai. And I would like to actually show the interview. But first, why don't we go to our discussion with William, since he's calling?
Yeah, well, shall we introduce William first? I think we probably should, right?
Well, Muhammad is not, he's not online. So let's do William.
Yes, but okay.
All right.
There we go. There it is. I was looking for the introduction to introduce William. That's what I was getting at. And I found it in the script. So wonderful. So over at Jadalia, you can find an interview with historian and lecturer William Carruthers about his new book, Flooded Pasts. The book revolves around a major event in the development of what became World Heritage and takes a deep dive into UNESCO and what the author terms the recolonization of archaeology. Welcome, William. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, thanks for having me. It's nice to be here.
Thanks for joining us. Absolutely. And sorry for the mix-up.
It's okay.
Could you please put this book in context of your broader research and past work in archaeology, and share whatever you'd like to share about the book? And we actually use these moments to acquaint people with the book and also to let them know where they can get a copy.
Sure. The book is out with Cornell University Press, I should add. If you go on my Twitter, there's a discount code, all the rest of it. The book is about, it's sort of like a long-term history of the entanglement of irrigation work in Egypt, Sudan, and the way that dovetailed, or sort of was made to dovetail, with archaeological survey, and what that means for the region of Nubia in particular, and the sort of visions of the past and the present of Nubia that we have. So it sort of comes out the fact that I was initially trained as an archaeologist. I then became a historian, and I worked in Egypt for a while, and sort of became interested in the history of the work I was doing. So this was sort of in the mid 2000s. That work was sort of, it's the history of archaeology in Egypt is that it's sort of, as everyone knows, like a sort of foreign dominated field that sort of comes out of European universities, really. It's sort of entangled with issues of scientific racism and colonialism, sort of writ large. And so I sort of became interested in why I was doing the work that I was doing, and wanted to write a historical sort of... I ended up doing a PhD in the history of science that concentrated on the history of archaeology in Egypt around the sort of middle of the 20th century, as it seemed to me that was sort of... no one had really looked at that period, and it was sort of a good time to work out when Egypt sort of transitioned to the free officers, what changed, what didn't. And so this book is sort of an extension of that. And I guess the other thing to say is that archaeology, the post-war in Egypt, I think sort of the number of archaeological excavations in Egypt dwindles. This campaign that the book centers on, which takes place throughout the 60s and into the 70s, really sort of saw a resurgence of archaeological work, and it sort of effectively led to where we are today. And so what that means is that there's like this coloniality to the work, essentially, that I think really continues. and you see manifest itself in different ways today, basically.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that comprehensive overview of the text. It certainly sounds interesting and like a one-of-a-kind text, and certainly a worthy read for anyone interested in archaeology, history, colonization, all of the above, anything under that umbrella. So thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope to have you on the show again.
Are you finishing another book anytime soon?
I should be starting another one. Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Cheers.
How late is it where you're at? Are we keeping you up?
It's about 10 to 8.
10 to 8. Okay, it's not so bad, but thank you for joining us at this late hour, William, and we'd love to have you again anytime.
Okay, it'd be nice to be back.
Take care.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. And scrolling. Apologies to our viewers. We did a little rearranging today, so we're just trying to find all the right
Take your
places
time.
to speak. Yeah. Oh, wow. All right. Now we will be shifting our discussion to Lebanon. This conversation will feature Mohammed Ali Nail, who is host of the October 17 diary series.
Which is a production of Status Hour. Did you like that? How I jumped in?
Really just...
This series takes place during the days of this. This thing's too loud. This series takes place during the days of the uprising, and this is serious.
Which uprising?
This is very serious.
Yeah.
This series takes place during the days of the Lebanese uprising, and of course, a lot of people would want us to, put quotation marks and so on. We're just going to read it. And the economic collapse that struck Lebanon in the fall of 2019. This doesn't require any quotation marks by any standard. At that time, Muhammad kept a diary in which he wrote down what was happening.
3 years later, you jumped in on my line, so I'm jumping back in. 3 years later, he recorded these diaries or episodes on a daily basis with the addition of a few voices and music that was composed to accompany the narration. Oh, that's amazing, because Muhammad produced a piece for us on music and uprisings previously on
For 10
Jadaliyya.
years.
Yeah.
Or 10 years after.
Oh, that's great. Mohammed is with us now to discuss the most recent installment of the series. Mohammed, welcome.
Ahlan Muhammad, I miss you so much. I have to say that.
Habibi, I miss you too, guys. How
Seriously.
you been? Thank you for having me on your show.
And sorry for the casualness and so on, but at this point,
It's who we are.
It's who we are, but
It's
after
Saturday
almost
night,
an
we are
hour,
pretty casual.
you have to assume that we just had like half a bottle of whiskey each, because this is what happens where things start falling apart.
Nice. I mean, it's Saturday night, and so we
Saturday
are
night,
on the
Masboud.
same level.
Saturday at 3 p.m. Great. Anyhow, Mohammed, thank you for joining us. If you could start by please telling us a bit about the events of the weeks and months surrounding these recently produced segments.
Well, as you said in the introduction, on the 17th of October 2019, protests took over the streets in Lebanon, and I was there, and in a sense, I felt that there was much more happening. If you remember, before the protest, there was the fire that hit Mount Lebanon. It was a seasonal fire, but it was drastic, and no one was able to put it down. And it kind of gave a very depressive mood and a warning sign to the things to come. The smoke was a warning sign. And then the economy collapsed, and protests engulfed the streets. So I was there. I wanted to see what was happening every day on the streets, outside the social bubble that I normally function within. So I wanted to see how the collapse was affecting everyone, and how people expressed their anger against that massive change that happened. And so during that time, I kept a notebook. And I felt like I wanted to write down everything that was happening with me from my own perspective on daily basis. And I felt like it was too big to rush into contextualizing it at the beginning, at least in the first month. And I wanted to let time pass and get back to these notebooks. And that's what happened this year after the elections. I felt like it's time to open these notebooks and look back at this period that affected Lebanon, and the country is still collapsing since. It didn't stop. The collapse didn't stop. It's continuous.
Shukran. Thank you so much, Habibi. This is a series that I've listened to myself carefully, and I really appreciated so much of what's involved, including the mixing and the aesthetics, the audible aesthetics. So, was this also part of the? I mean, can you tell us a little bit about that process? I know I should be asking about the politics, but
No, the
can you just
technical
first,
process. Thank you for asking about the
please?
technical process, because I thought I wanted to narrate it in a way that it's not just a voice telling what happened. I wanted to curate a soundscape and some music that could actually respond to to the narration that was happening, and and accompany it, and basically give an atmosphere musically, with sound effects, with samples recorded from the times that things were happening, that will give an atmosphere, a bigger atmosphere, beside the narration of the daily events of the diaries. And I think it's the first time I experimented to such thing, and I like the idea of having an atmosphere accompanying the narration, and I want to continue to develop this style and explore different topics.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm really excited. I did not realize that there was this musical element
Oh
of
yeah,
the
absolutely.
series. So I'm very excited about that
Ahmed
because
is a DJ. He's a producer. Also, I
yeah.
dare say, music producer or mixer, and he is also extremely talented in terms of his prose. He's written many articles that appeared literally everywhere, including on Jadaliya in both Arabic and in English. He's a self-taught human being whom I respect to the end of the world, and I love very much. Actually, I get
Habibi
emotional when I
Bassam,
talk to
I
him, so maybe I
respect you
shouldn't look at
too.
him.
Habibi Man,
No, I mean I'm so excited. I was actually just talking about you the other day, Mohammed,
thank you.
about your work in regards to culture and alternative cultural spaces, and I was discussing your work on music and the uprisings, and so I'm so excited.
And I'm assigning
Amazing.
your piece in my class on its titled Text, Film, and the Arab
Great, you had to
Uprisings
one up me
right
with
now
That's
how much you
at
like
amazing.
Mohammed's
George
work.
Mason
Excellent news.
University. I swear, because it's a fantastic work, and it is what, 40 pages,
Yeah, it's long.
uh, completely documented, cited, linked. It's a very powerful document about. Can you say a couple words before we let you go about this document, about this article that you wrote in Jadaliya, which we had to publish in parts,
And we will link in the digest.
and we will link in the digest.
Of course, first of all, I want to thank Jadaliya for affording the space for such a topic that spans at the time of 10 years, because it's a big topic and it's a dear topic to me through personal experience and so on. And I think it deserves the attention that I gave, and the details, in documenting that period, because it kind of changed. It changed the life of a generation, or the people who were involved in this, and we are still living the results of those years. And so, yes, I was glad to actually put my mind into it, and try to understand it through writing about it. And again, I want to thank Jadaliya for affording the space, because nowadays people want to read 200 words articles, and tell you the truth, what can a person say with 200 words about such important topics? And so thank you again.
I tried to look it up. Anyway, we do have to move on because we have two more segments. But Muhammad, أنا كتير حابب, I really would like to do good on our discussion when we were in London, which is basically to have an entire podcast with you about the article where we actually
Yalla.
show. I mean, it's literally show some of the videos and images that you actually address. So now I made two commitments. One.
Amazing. Let's do
What
it.
did we
It's
make?
a lot of commitments
two or
in a short
three?
period of time, my friend.
Well, one with Max.
One with Noura. Noura with
نورا ما
Jihad.
خصني بس أنا know
Yeah, okay.
بس I'm gonna have to set it up.
Yeah, I know.
Noura, when she comes here. Third with Ali, محمد علي. Okay, حبيبي. شكرا كتير. Please say
Amazing.
hello.
Thanks for having me on your show. And we always like to vibe with you, Bassam. So let's do it.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward. I love what you're wearing there.
Habibi, thanks.
Habibi, take care.
Good
Salam.
to see you.
Yalla. Thanks, guys. Thanks, MK.
Of course, good to see you.
Take
Good
care.
to see you all.
Okay. Let me find the correct slide. Haha, found it. Okay. In August 2022, U.S. President Joe Biden signed an act expanding benefits and healthcare to U.S. veterans exposed to toxins in burn pits. Kelly Rubai, assistant professor of anthropology at Purdue University, asks, what about Iraqi exposure to those burn pits? The research addresses the long-term diffuse exposure at all stages of life with effects that are varied and widespread. She has worked closely with Iraqi families since 2009, leading a team of doctors, epidemiologists, and activists to conduct a case control study among families experiencing birth defects that might be linked to burn pits and bombings. Bassam had the pleasure of speaking with Callie recently.
I had the pleasure of speaking. I was supposed to say that, no? Because I had the pleasure.
Yeah, you did.
I had the pleasure.
I wish I had the pleasure, so I just inserted myself into that narrative.
I had the pleasure of speaking with Kali, and I would love to share with you the conversation we had. It's actually about a very difficult topic, and we wanted to make it a lot longer, but because of the way the show works, it couldn't be. But again, we might have her on an extended.
Well, and the whole podcast episode will be available now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's not with us. It's not with me. Okay, salam alaikum.
So,
Good afternoon, everyone. We are very excited to have with us Professor Kali Rubai, who will be speaking to us about the podcast she recorded with Malihe Razazan recently on Status Hour, the long-term health consequences of exposure to burn pits in Iraq. Welcome, Kali.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us. I am I have been interested in your work over the years, and I do follow, and I actually learned about this.
Hospital also started noticing, this was 2004, a higher rate of congenital anomalies and a higher level of diversity of the kinds of congenital
Podcast she recorded with Malihe Razazan recently on Status Hour, the long-term health consequences of exposure to burn pits in Iraq. Welcome, Kali.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us. I am I have been interested in your work over the years, and I do follow, and I actually learned about this way before we actually were looking to invite you for this particular show. And we'd love to get your take on the topic of the podcast. We would also like to know what you're up to now. I understand you have an upcoming trip to Fallujah, and if you can share with us something about your current research and what you're up to.
Thank you. Yes, so the podcast was about the recent passage of the PACT Act, which extended medical and financial benefits to veterans and their caretakers who had suffered from acute short-term exposure to military burn pits in Iraq and Afghanistan. And my research is oriented towards understanding the effects of all military infrastructure and the long-term health effects of militarism on Iraqi people who lived downwind of burn pits and amidst the detritus of battles, and then, of course, the extractive industry that comes after battles in so-called peacetime. So that's what that podcast was about, and about understanding the various layers of exposure that people experience in the last 20 years in particular. And Fallujah is one of the hotspots for the inundation of these exposures. So it's a place where a lot of people are managing multiple health effects and multiple environmental effects from the US invasion and the battles afterwards.
Thanks, Kali. Can you tell us a little bit about what you are up to now? I understand that you will be traveling at some point to Fallujah, which is, I'm assuming it's less of a risk right now than it was about 18 years ago. But tell us a little bit more about this and what your current research is about.
Sure. So over the last year and a half, actually, I've been living in and out of Fallujah, mostly there, a little bit back in the United States, and I'll be returning again periodically throughout the year. And I'm working on an interdisciplinary study with epidemiologists and environmental doctors and soil scientists and also environmental activists and families to try and understand if there is a provable link between the high incidence of congenital anomalies or birth defects, as they're called colloquially, and the environmental impacts of war, burn pits being one of those factors. And that means working with families and understanding the various ways they were exposed to military bombardment from the ground, air, and water over the last 20 years. That project, because it's interdisciplinary, will have implications for public health, but it will also have implications for what kind of justice recourse is possible as families are trying to understand the international justice system and ways that they can seek accountability.
And is there a type of progression or what is the data like from the moment we began witnessing and experiencing what has been happening in Fallujah in terms of the birth defects and all the outcomes of the weaponry used since the war, particularly after 2004, as I understand? Is there progression? Is there a timeline that you can share with us so we can contextualize?
Sure. So right around the time doctors in the US started noticing health problems among military personnel who were coming back to the US for medical care, doctors in Fallujah Hospital also started noticing, this was 2004, a higher rate of congenital anomalies and a higher level of diversity of the kinds of congenital anomalies they were witnessing. So there started to be, a discourse and tracking and trying to understand what's going on. And there have been some studies understanding this, but there's also been a lot of political effort to suppress that kind of research. So the data that I'm collecting is soil samples, personal histories, dwelling histories, and also medical data that can help us better understand what the links are between the health effects that are experienced by those veterans who experienced acute short-term exposure in the peak of their life, in their 30s, 20s and 30s, and then what's going on with children, elderly, and people who are living long-term diffuse exposure over the last 20 years.
Thanks, Kali. Well, all power to you for looking into something as grim as this topic. And I hope that we continue to connect with you, not least because this is the 20th anniversary of the Iraq invasion. And I don't want to put you on the spot in public, but I would love to invite you to an extended conversation to commemorate some of what we have witnessed in the past 20 years. So I hope we speak again, and best of luck, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you. Speak to you again soon.
Well, that was certainly a great recap that you conducted with her, and a reminder that the entire interview that goes in depth into her research and the findings as they stand right now, and discussion of the politics between Iraqis versus Americans exposed to the burn pits, all of that is included in the podcast episode, which is available at statushour.com or wherever you get your podcasts. And finally, we have two last things for you today. First and foremost, we're going to talk about the Connections podcast, because it wouldn't be live with ASI if we didn't talk about the Connections podcast and how
why are we laughing?
Maureen Ravani produces like 32 episodes a month, more than one a day. Anyhow, unfortunately, he couldn't be with us today, which I feel like has almost never happened.
He's actually giving a talk somewhere, or he's at a conference, and he sent us like a quick.
Who does he think he is? Who does he think he is?
And it's an interesting angle.
Mm-hmm.
as you'll
All right.
see.
Okay. Well, anyhow, he has conducted interviews recently regarding Palestine and other such topics with guests such as Norman Finkelstein and Maya Mikdashi. The latest episode of Connections features a conversation with Oxford doctoral candidate Jamie Stern Weiner about a somewhat related issue, the quote-unquote anti-Semitism crisis in the UK Labour Party and its lasting effects on UK politics. Bassem spoke with Muin, and we will share that interview with you now.
Actually, the interesting thing is that this image is actually more confusing than anything. By the way, we have to say that there was we couldn't get rid of the subtitle or the lower third that said Mo Ali Nail when Kali Rubai was speaking, so we apologize. That was Kali Rubai, not Mo Ali Nail, who had just spoken right prior. All right, here we go.
Oh my God, what
was
is this
a busy
angle?
month for the Connections
told you, Sandeep.
podcast. We began with an interview with Gideon Levy, the prominent Israeli columnist and journalist, and asked him about the significance of Israel's new government. He made the point that there is actually not all that much that is new about the government, particularly if one looks at the practices of its predecessors, but he also warned that things are liable to get very much worse, and that he looks to the international community, in which he places, unfortunately, very little hope, to call Israel to account and prevent the further fall into the abyss. Subsequently, I spoke with Jadaliya co-editor Maya Mikdashi about her important new book, Sectarianism, looking at the interplay of religion, politics, and sexuality in contemporary Lebanon. And also had a discussion relating her conceptual work and her academic work to the current disintegration of Lebanese state and society. Subsequently, two interviews were conducted with the British doctoral candidate and scholar Jamie Stern Weiner. The first about what is becoming an increasingly new definition of anti-Semitism as anti-Zionism and as any and all criticism of Israel and its policies. And this, of course, focuses on the definition being put forward by the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. Jamie has done extensive research into how this definition came about, how it's been manipulated, and the various forms of subterfuge that have been used to advance this concept that essentially seeks to defame any critic of Israel, and we spoke about that. And then in a second interview, we looked into the so-called anti-Semitism crisis in the British Labour Party during the leadership of Jeremy Corbyn. And finally, also conducted an interview with the Whitman College professor Zahi Zalloua about Palestine as a representative of universal values and the importance of international solidarity. So quite a few interviews in January, and this month also, with the exception, of course, of Maya Mikdashi's important work, very much focused on Palestine.
Okay, everyone, it is time for everyone's favorite time of the episode, which is when we tell you what you must read instead of...
Maybe something about the disclaimer about Mo.
Oh, a disclaimer again, yet again. It's our lower thirds are still reading that Muhammad is speaking when in fact that was Muin Rabbani. So just keep that in mind.
Sorry about that. We don't know what. I mean, it's just coming up every time there's a video. Let's see if there's we didn't do an interlude. Let's see if it comes up with the interlude. Just yeah. There it is, Muhammad Ali Nail again. It won't go away. All right, go ahead.
Anyhow, as usual, we'll end with a couple of must-read recommendations.
MESPI has put out 2 installments of Essential Readings, which is a series that invites experts to create essential reading lists covering various perspectives in a particular field. The first installment deals with the 2022 uprising in Iran, while the second essential reading is part of a larger series exploring there was like a jerky scroll.
Asif.
Well, the second essential reading is a part of a larger series exploring the question of urbanism and spatial production across the region.
Before we move to the next thing, can you put this camera on, please? On me. I want people to know how serious I am. Hello, I've said it before. And I'm going to say it again. If you are a graduate student, you need to be using essential readings. They are literally annotated bibliographies. I cannot emphasize enough how useful they are and how much time they save you. It is all the research, quality research you need on any specific topic already done for you. So if you take one thing away from what I've said today, let
Absolutely.
it be that. Let it be that. Okay, anyhow, in addition to must reads, we have must listens. Oh, that's new, gentlemen. Our scriptwriters throwing in new things. Okay. Okay, we have...
Is anybody watching?
No. No. Okay. There's an episode where status episode where lecturer and researcher Lubaba Sabri had a discussion on factionalism and critical knowledge production with Palestinian activists. Wow, we got a lot on Palestine today, as there should be. The conversation was with Palestinian activist and professor Abdel Sattar Qasim, which was conducted a few months before his passing in 2021. And that brings us to the conclusion of our show, covering...
Did we want... I probably should have shown on screen the full thing, but it's okay.
What?
The visual.
Oh.
It's all right. It's all good.
Okay. Anyhow, that was Live with ASI covering the month of January as well as December, no?
Yes.
Yeah.
You just figured this out?
Well, but for the...
But who?
In the script, it just says January. Sorry, boys, I didn't mean to out you there. I had to throw you under the bus to save myself, okay?
This is not the best time to say it, but we just would like to say that we are having a transition. Not MK and I, but the show is having a transition from our awesome and amazing and lovely producer, Muhammad Abu Ghazala, to our other awesome and amazing person who is right here, Abdullah Tafish. He is going to be our scriptwriter. So Abdullah, welcome and thank you for everything you've done so quickly, so efficiently, and so beautifully. Abdullah sitting also with us, who actually trained Muhammad sitting there, who trained Abdullah. So thank you, Abdullah, for joining us. And we just wanted to say thank you and welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you guys. It'll be a cleaner script next time.
It was so clean.
It was amazing. It was amazing. It was amazing.
It was really so
thank
clean.
you,
There
thank
was
you.
nothing to correct. I'm just... Okay, this is so... I don't want to break it. I'll just go like this.
ليش اعمل لي هيك؟
See? Okay. So my mic is now done here. Thank you so much. Oh my God. Oh, I closed my laptop. Okay. Thank you so much for joining us, seeing all that goes on. Again, we are professionals. This is brought to you with the utmost. I have to hold it, otherwise it goes down. Well, I swear. Just stay tuned if you want to keep hearing Bassem laugh. You look redder than I do right now. Please be sure to check out the episode.
I can't get over how you're holding the mic.
Please be sure to check out the episode digest on jadalia.com later this week.
If you're still listening.
For links to all the content we covered, including the things that we just shouted out and weren't actually included in the script, but we will include in the digest. All of this will be available in the coming days. Thank you to all of our guests and viewers. We will see you next month for episode 3. I mean, 3 more seconds. Shut it for 3 more seconds. Okay, we will be back for episode 3.6 where we will be covering the month of February. Thank you so much. Now
Thank you so much. Yalla, bye.